interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us.
My name is John Kofsky. I ended up as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy as a naval aviator. I joined the Navy right out of high school. Of course, the war had already been going on for a year and a half. When I joined the Navy in 1943, that was the talk of everybody in the school seemed to be talking about the war and what they were going to do. I'm sure 75% of the kids in my class joined the Navy or joined some military service during the summer of 1943. I was lucky enough to get in the cadet program for the Navy and went to various stations. I went to Monmouth, Illinois for my flight preparatory. Transferred to Le Iowa for my initial flying. This was actually a bunch of farmers who had little light airplanes out in the middle of the cornfields that they had up there. That was our first experience with flying. If we were successful there, we went to pre-flight, which in my case was at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. And from there I went to Ottumwa, Iowa to take my E-base, which is where we had the twin winged airplanes, bi-wing, and that was a lot of fun. Then we went to Corpus Christi, Texas, where I got my wings, but before we got our wings, of course, we had to go through our advanced training, and finally got my wings in December of 1944, almost the end of the war. I was later transferred to the West Coast in San Diego, and was actually a replacement pilot. Unfortunately, I would like to have been in the squadron, but the technique then was to keep every ship at the sea full complement. So if they lost a pilot or lost an airplane, why, we just take a new airplane and a new pilot and put him on that ship. And that's what happened to me. My first ship was the USS Cabot, which was in the South Pacific, of course. They were transferred back to the States for repair from a kamikaze attack, but I wasn't out there long enough to go with them, so I transferred to the USS Essex and had the remainder of the war with USS Essex. Toward the end of the war, the Japanese were not interested in shooting down airplanes. They were interested in sinking ships, so we had no aerial combat at that time. Our duties were threefold. We primarily had close air support for the Marines on Okinawa, and that was a tough job for me because even though we got a lot of glory out of being aviators, people who really were the heroes of the war were the guys that are on the ground, the grunts as we call them. We'd go over to help them out with some attacks and what have you, but then we went back to our ships, had a nice clean place to sleep, nice clean bed to sleep in, some hot food. Those poor guys were on the ground forever. They had to sleep in it, eat in it, fight in it, and we had to go off and leave them. That was a tough job for me. Of course, one of the other things we did was kamikaze attacks. We had patrols to keep them away from the ship. We were reasonably successful, but also, as you know, several of them got through and damaged some of our ships significantly. And the third one was the attacks on Japan itself. When we found a nest of airplanes, we figured they were kamikaze airplanes, and so we'd attack those airplanes, do as much damage as we could. We had such major better airplanes, better training, and poor kamikaze pilots, they only got enough gas to go one way. They got no ammunition at all except the bomb they were carrying. And some of them, that was the first time they'd ever been flying an airplane when they took off with that bomb. So they had a tough job to do. I don't know, it's the first time I heard of a suicide bomber, but of course we've got a lot of those now. And this was after an attack on planes on Kyushu Island. I decided that I would do a touch and go on the Japanese mainland. What this involved was putting the landing gear down and the flaps so I could slow the airplane down, come in for a landing, but instead of landing, why, after you touch the wheels on, you pour the coal to it and take off again and join the squadron. Of course, I got a lot of slack from my commanding officer on that operation, but he, in a way, congratulated me on having the guts to do something like that, if that's possible. Anyhow, I enjoyed that flight, and I'll always remember it. From there on back to the ship, why, my teammates were hogging me, making attacks on me just to make sure that I knew what I had done. Went back, had an uneventful landing, and had a very nice day. These are just a couple of pictures that I was able to put together for the event tonight. And this start with the island here, or it's actually not an island, that's an atoll out in the South Pacific. And it's Ulithi. Ulithi is about 40 miles north to south and 25 miles east to west in its widest point. You could get the entire fleet inside there with a lot of protection because there's only a couple of ways in and a couple of ways out. The important thing of the island is that two little islands here. One of them is called Falalap, and that was big enough to put about a 3,000-foot runway in it, and that's where we brought our spare planes in from carriers. They came just with airplanes, no pilots. And then there's another little island called Magmag, and Magmag was the beer garden of the Pacific. There's our R&R, a bunch of guys got off the ship, went and had a couple cans of beer. These are unfortunately, this torpedo plane went over the side. Looks like the people got out all right. These are all their flight deck operations. This is a group of Corsairs ready to go. They'll be all taken off one at a time. Here's a Corsair I took up, had a picture close because it shows the size of that propeller. It's 13.5 feet in diameter. And that's one of the things that really made it a heck of a fine airplane. This is an example of a good landing. Guy came in, the landing signal officer out there on the deck, guiding him in. This is an example of one that's not too good. He got too low and too slow. The landing signal officer has to run. He usually stands behind this little wind gauge here because the wind's about 35 miles an hour coming across the deck. Anyhow, he almost got killed there. This is a picture right after the war where everybody, all the ships in the area, had some place to go, and that happened to be the Ulithi Atoll that I showed you a while ago. Cameras were no-nos in the Navy for us individuals, but every once in a while some photographer come along and get a bunch of guys together, take a picture, and what they did with it, I have no idea. But we got a copy of it, and that's me in the lower left-hand part. Okay, well, this is some of the gear we used to wear. This is what's known as the famous Mae West. It's actually a flotation gear that pilots wear over the ocean, over water. It's quite a unique device. When you bail out, you got your parachute, of course. And then when you hit the water, you want to wait until after you're in the water. However, they have a little toggle switch down here on two sides, one on that side and one on that side. And that pull those down, and that would inflate it with some CO2 in the little bottles that were in here, so that you had something to float around in. And the importance of this thing is everything you need to survive is on this vest. You got a light so you can see at night. You got shock repellent. We don't know whether that really worked or not. You got some dye markers so people can see you from the air. It might be red or yellow or green or something different colored in the water for sure. We have two flares here that you can pull out, pull them so that you can make a flare. If you hear an airplane, they can't hear you, see you. You can light that flare up and they'll come down and get with you. So we also had place for cigarettes and matches because, of course, most of us smoke, and we needed the matches to build fires in case we got to an island. This was a very handy device. It also would leak, of course, and so they supplied you with a little mouth job so you could blow it up yourself if you were in the water. This saved an awful lot of aviators during the war. Heck of a nice piece of equipment. This is a helmet we used to use. This was later on in the war when we got hard helmets. This is an oxygen mask. I can't get the thing on my head now, but this is the microphone that you can pull down, talk on the air. If you needed help, and I'll try to put this on, but I don't think I'll be successful. And you can bring this into play later on, but it looks something like that. Pretty neat equipment. Anyhow, the war ended, thankfully, because people worried about the atomic bomb, but I'm happy it happened because I don't think I'd have been here if we had attacked Japan. So I stayed in the Navy until 1948 because I loved to fly. It was a place great to fly with nobody shooting at you. But finally decided I better get out and get an education. Got married, had my family. Stayed in the Marines, stayed in the Navy until 1961 in the reserves. Flew out of New Orleans, the Naval Air Station while I was in school, and then out of the station at Columbus, Ohio. Finally retired from the military completely in 1961.